Hey guys, it's Merce. Welcome back to Harpies in the Trees, where I review horror books with a supernatural focus. Thank you guys so much for all of the positive and very kind feedback that you guys had for the Edgar Allan Poe, The Black Cat reading. I've always really enjoyed listening to audiobooks that had some sound placed inside of there, you know, whether they're just creaking doors or maybe it's just a little bit of music to kind of let you know what maybe the mental or emotional mood is. And I like those. I think they just immerse you into the story a little more. So for me, doing these things is just like being a kid and playing, and it's really fun. So I am really excited that you guys do like them and do want more. So I will be doing some more. I'll be doing another poll to talk about which story I should read next. Unfortunately, they all have to be in the public domain because obviously it would get pretty expensive to try and license something from a publisher or a living author. So unless they gave me free permission, which could be really interesting, for now, it'll just be the public domain stories, and there's a ton of them. I think I'm gonna definitely keep them at a half an hour though, because that's a lot. It was a lot of work. I think just for this half an hour reading, like the reading didn't take very long at all, but the editing took me about 12 hours. So it was just like, it's fun, but it's a lot, you know? So I fear that if it's longer than 30 minutes, I think it might just be too much for me to handle by myself. A few of you had been sort of asking me when this was going to happen and finally, I don't know, it was like a week or so ago where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna finally do this. Since I put this poll out like 2 months ago. So that was a really nice push, and I'm really happy with it, and the story was amazing. I've never read The Black Cat before, and it was actually emotional for me to read because I had no idea what was going to happen, or you know what this theme was, and those parts are really hard to read, but I thought the story was magnificent. It was creepy, it was brutal, it was intense, it was way more than I was expecting, but I think it is now probably one of the top things I've read in my entire life. It's just so good. So really good pick, guys, really good pick. You guys know what you're talking about, so I am excited to see what you guys will pick for the next one. So today I'm going to be reviewing two novellas. They are two very different stories written by two very different authors, but I really enjoyed both of them. So the two books that we are going to be talking about are John Boden's Spungunion and Jayson Robert Ducharme, Ceremony of Ashes. Let's start with Ceremony of Ashes. So Ceremony of Ashes begins on Halloween, and there is a mother and a daughter. They are going out to celebrate Halloween, and they've been going to a few houses already, but they've decided to just maybe hit one more block and then call it a night. And as they are deciding to, you know, take on the adventure of getting more candy for a little bit longer, out of the darkness comes this woman walking down the street, and she's dressed very strangely. She has on all black, and she has she's wearing a hat, and it also has a veil, so you can't really see her face. And she walks over to the mother and the little girl, and she has sort of a strange accent. It sounds sort of French. And she introduces herself, and she says,
"My name is Angélique Delepoint."
And she's very strange, but she starts kind of performing these little tricks for the little girl, and they are actually very cool and intriguing. And as the mother is kind of like letting her guard down a little bit, her senses kind of come back to her, and she's like, you know, I don't think I've ever seen you around the neighborhood before. You know, how long have you lived here? And Angelique sort of gives her some like strange answers that don't seem like they could be credible. And then suddenly Angelique pulls out a metronome and she asks the daughter and the mother to look at this metronome, and she begins to say some things. And the next thing we know, the girl and her mother are following Angelique into the woods. And that's when our story really begins. It wasn't too long ago when I was speaking with the Hellbound Heart on Instagram, and we were both sort of talking about how we haven't read a witch story that we really liked. The only other book that I remember reading recently is Hex, and I did DNF Hex. It wasn't a very interesting book to me. I had a lot of issues with the book, and it just did not work for me. That was, one of the witch books that I read where I was like, so this is a really cool story. I actually really enjoyed it a lot. It actually pulled me in as soon as I started reading it. I really enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the dialogue, I enjoyed where the story went, and I was really curious as to like how it was going to resolve itself. And it was a lot of fun, and I really, really liked it. I think, the two main characters are Lou and Cole. They are two small town constables or police officers who work in such a small town that they don't even handle the crimes in their own town. That goes upstream to, the closest, biggest city. And so when people start disappearing and missing, you have these two constables who are like, kind of feeling like I gotta do something. I know these people, I've grown up with these people. We get to meet people and know people through the two cops. Their relationship felt very believable, and I think that's the thing that I like about this story is like, it takes something like witches, which is a little bit hard for me, I think, to like really get down with, but it made it seem plausible. The witch aspect was really cool and really fun. I thought the character, Angelique, was very intriguing, and I do like this aspect that she performs magic tricks, which I think is an interesting part of her character. Makes me think of like this kind of like chaos jester or something, because she's like, oh, let me, do these magic tricks for you.
I'm probably gonna lead you to your doom.
And everybody else, felt like a person, which I think that's really hard to do in a very short story, is to make people feel solid, because you got a few hints about who they were as individuals, little tiny backstories, and like those things like help so much to make you feel more emotionally invested or just interested. So there's really some interesting characters. Even some of the side characters are pretty interesting. So I like that. I like that it was really written with a lot of care, because you can kind of just feel that. And there was also like a few scenes that I thought were kind of stunning. And I really appreciated those. They were just kind of visually like really kind of beautiful. So yeah, I really liked this. I thought this was the best witch book I've read since I don't know when. But it was great. I didn't have any complaints about it. It's just natural dialogue. The story was pretty solid. So my ratings for novellas are very different from my book ratings. I kind of just do these like off the cuff. So I think this was very, very enjoyable and interesting, so I gave this 5 stars. And our next book is John Boden's Spungunion. So our book opens with Deke. He's a truck driver, and he kind of lives this sort of miserable, sort of minimal life, if you could say that. He is devastated by the loss of his wife, and he just really hasn't been able to recover from that. So we get to see that in the way that he's living, just eating a bunch of beans or ramen or, whatever simplistic foods that he can get, cheap foods basically. And he's also kind of living in squalor. And not only that, he also still lives in his apartment where his wife was murdered and sleeps on the mattress that she was murdered on. So her blood is still there, and that her blood is like something that is a part of her that remains and allows him to kind of feel like she's there, to kind of be with her in a way. One day he's at work and there's a guy named Tiny, and he hooks him up with a individual who can help him out with something, like maybe help him out with that problem of his, dead wife problem. Maybe he can give him some answers or something. And so Deke goes off to meet with this guy to see if he has any answers for him or any insight. And this is when Deke's adventure begins on the Lost Souls Highway. So if you didn't know what Spagonian means, don't worry, I got you. Spagonian means a dish made from rotting roadkill, usually a skunk or a possum. The more fragrant or maggoty, the better. Or something that's been on the road for a long and unfortunate time. Which probably sounds like Deke, I'm thinking. I did read this introduction, and it's by Bracken McLeod. And one of the things in here that he talks about is music. And the three musicians or bands that McLeod mentions is Tom Waits, Wynton Marsalis, and Wolves in the Throne Room, which I was like, nice grouping. And he also mentions like Chet Baker, so I feel like me and McLeod probably have like the same playlists hanging out somewhere. And music does play a really big influence in this book. And in the back there is a page that's called Soundtrack Acknowledgements. And it says, the following artist provided the soundtrack to the writing of this or some other type of influence. And it has a pretty big paragraph of just music, and also a quote by Marilyn Manson that says, music is the strongest form of magic. So what did I think about Spagonian? I thought that it was sort of like, just the way that I was kind of perceiving it when I was reading it was like this really gritty graphic novel. Like, one of those like graphic novels where, there's like ink splatters on the page, and, maybe all the colors are sort of like a muted autumny type color or something. Or maybe like the color of like a Blue Plate special or like an open-faced turkey sandwich or something like that. But it was like John Boden, I'm beginning to learn. It was very beautiful and sentimental, and it had some really amazing characters. Just like, I want to tell you what they are, but the book is way too short for me to do that. You just have to know that like there's just so many really interesting characters in here that are unforgettable. And I think that's like maybe why the graphic novel kind of comes into mind when I think about this. It's very, very palpable, I guess, like all of these characters and like who they are and what's happening. It kind of starts off as like this, I don't know, sort of strange noir-esque mystery, who killed my wife, and about this character, this blue-collar character, just being consumed by this lack of knowledge and needing to know and not being able to let go until he knows, and not really being able to progress or move forward in his life in any way whatsoever. And so he goes on this journey and he meets these interesting people. He starts to, get some information back, and that becomes a really interesting resolution for the story. When I read John Boden's work, I always read it very slowly, because it's not because it's like difficult or, kind of convoluted or anything like that. It's just because there's so much in every word. It has its own pace, it has its own beat. He's not just trying to tell you a story, he's also trying to like immerse you a little bit. It's like how McLeod's talking about, John Boden's like, music or something. It's like that, where it's more than just telling a story, there's like something additional there. There's something more there that's being said. And I think that's why it always has this like mythical quality, parable-esque quality, especially this feels like a parable. So yeah, I really, enjoyed this. Whereas Ceremony of Ashes is kind of more of a straightforward horror story. Spagonian is more of a bizarre, mythic parable. I like this combination that I think John Boden is getting known for, or is known for, this mix of like bizarre and horror and mythic and horror or something. It's very, very, very cool. So yeah, I really enjoyed this as well. So I also give this novella 5 stars. I thought it was awesome. So that was it. 2 very short novellas. But they were very cool, and if you have an opportunity to read them, you definitely should. So thank you so much to Jayson Robert Ducharme for sending me Ceremony of Ashes. That was an ARC request, and I really, really enjoyed it. Also, thank you to John Boden for sending me Spungunion, because he knows how much I love his work and he sent me this book. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Leave me a comment below. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me what's going on in your book world. I would love to hear about it. You can also follow me at Harpies in the Trees on Instagram. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for spending your evening with me. I really appreciate it. Please take care of yourself, watch out for each other, and I will talk to you next time.